I know you're gonna dig this.
This is Skip the Funktologist, host of the Funk Music Hall of Fame and Exhibition Center's award-winning show, Funk Chronicles, recorded live here at DATV Studios in Dayton, Ohio. Skyping in all the way from Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina, we have with us Tom Browne.
What's up? What's up?
How you doing, Tom?
Doing real well. Glad to be with you.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us. Hey, Tom, want to chat with you a little bit and just get familiar with your career, what you got going on currently, and of course, your thoughts on the Funk Music Hall of Fame and Exhibition Center's project. So, first of all, I want to ask you, where are you originally from?
Originally Jamaica, New York. Going back the 60s and 70s, it was just an area that had some great young musicians that were also surrounded by folks like James Brown and Count Basie. So it was a great learning environment.
All right. So who were some of your musical influences and how did you land on the trumpet as your main instrument?
Musically, it was probably Lee Morgan, Clifford Brown, on the jazz bebop side. Although Lee, I'd probably Lee got a lot of credit for this whole pre-funk thing. So, I mean, those are my trumpet influences, probably Lee, Clifford, Freddie Hubbard, for sure. And it was just something about the trumpet. I just got pulled to the instrument, for the sound of it for some reason.
Okay.
I put my finger on it.
Yeah, right. So, Tom, at what point, in your musical development did you decide or realize you wanted to be a professional musician?
I believe it or not, I didn't. I was actually going in for an aviation career. I'd gone to school for science, and music was my cool out. Music is what I did to just kind of, when my friends went out and played ball, I went up and played music. Mm-hmm. And it just so happened that I was in the right place, right time, and got offered a record contract. And I looked at the aviation and said, well, this is something I could do anytime. And, looked at the music and said, this is something that's like a once in a lifetime thing. And so I chose to go with the music. And there were two loves. I mean, they were equally, things I love to do equally, really.
Right. Well, Tom, you made it, sound kind of easy because those of us in this industry know it can really be, a struggle, a lot of sacrifices to make your career happen. So you just mentioned you got offered a record deal. Why don't you explain to us, how did that come about?
That came about, I was playing, I started out playing with Weldon Irvine and Sonny Fortune for a couple of years, but I ended up playing in a club uptown Manhattan called the Breeze and Lounge. And something about the name should have told me who it was associated with, but I didn't put it together. But it turned out that Breeze and Lounge was owned by the first manager of George Benson. As such, there were just a lot of named people that came through there. I mean, George Butler from Columbia came through there quite a bit. CTI came through there. There's just a bunch of labels. Earl Klugh was in there all the time. And so just being in that environment and playing in that environment just perked people's ears, I guess. I guess they heard something, and they a couple folks ended up offering me a record deal. I first got offered a deal from CTI Records, but it turned out that after speaking to Jimmy Boyd, who was the club owner and George's manager, and once I found out that he managed George, I kind of let him handle my business affairs. we ended up going with Arista GRP Records.
Okay. All right. Now, when you first got started, you were doing more jazz, right? Was it the traditional stuff or the bebop, or what form of jazz?
It was more like, pop jazz. I mean, they called it crossover. I hate that term, because it kind of implies that we have to change what we do to be accepted, which, that is so passe that I don't even want to go there. But they called it crossover. And the whole idea was, taking jazz artists and putting them in like a kind of a pop jazz setting, and seeing how it worked out. So it worked out well. I mean, the record sold real well for jazz album.
Okay. All right. We know that, a monster hit for you, is Funkin' for Jamaica.
Oh, yeah.
How did that come about? I mean, as you just mentioned about this crossover thing, the pop, so forth, but then all of a sudden you spilled over into this funk thing. How did that happen?
That was the second record called Love Approach, and we had that record 99% done. Jamaica wasn't on it at the time. And when we handed the record in, Arista told us, well, it just seems like it needs something more. Just maybe one more song. And I remember vividly going home and writing this bass line. I remember working this bass line out in my head and just like, just kind of, yeah, that's working. Yeah, that's back when you had, like Moog synthesizers and all these early analog synthesizers. So I was working this thing out on a little synth that I had. And I brought it into the studio the next day and showed it to Bernard Wright. And, we worked on it for a minute. He said, oh, yeah, I dig it. It kind of grew into a hometown, we the boys from Jamaica kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
It just grew. It was all the right people in the right setting at the right time. That's all it was. It was pure chance.
Okay.
It was Bernard understanding the groove and Marcus Miller, on the guitar and pluck lines, and Dave Grusin on keyboard, and it just snowballed and grew. Right. One of the keyboard players that was in my touring band at the time, a guy named Eric Rail, had a fiance named Tony Smith. And she was a singer, and Tony had not gotten a chance to sing, and we said, okay, well, let's, turned out she was like Shaka Khan double. To this day, I think it was Shaka Khan that sang that song. But the song just took off. I mean, the funny thing is when we handed that song in, Arista said, yeah, okay. I mean, they didn't hear anything special about it.
Right.
And they just kind of accepted it, like, all right, that's the 10th song, no problem. Nobody expected it to do what it did. Nobody.
Right. So during the recording process, though, Tom, did you have a feeling like, man, we got something here? Or were you just as shocked when it took off?
I was just as shocked. I knew that it was just a hometown groove. I knew there was just something, because basically it was just a drum and bass groove that just kind of snowballed. Even the rap part of it. I remember the guys who did it said, wait a minute, we're gonna go out and energize and come right back. Next thing you know, they were just saying their heart. Nobody expected to do it, including me. It just took off.
Okay. Tom, you've been in the music business for a while now, and a question that I like to ask artists who've been in the game for a minute is this: what do you like about the music business today, and what don't you like about it?
Coming from a jazz perspective is where I gotta look at it, because that's my heart. The music business today seems to be very sterile. It's more about, if you go back to the 70s and 80s, I remember when Jamaica was out. I remember I was living in New York City at the time, and I could tune in a station, and they might play my song, and then right behind it they might play Elton John, and right behind that they might play the Beatles, and right behind that they may play Sly and Family Stone. It's all on one station, because the whole idea was if it's good music, it's good music.
Right.
Okay? Things have gotten so niche-oriented and specialty-oriented that the music has become sterile. It's really there's very little experimentation. There's very little, this is what we're all about. It's just like, kind of find your niche, play that niche, don't play anything else, and just drop into that groove, and that's it. And that's what I'm having a real difficult time with. There's this new record that we just put out. I'm marketing smooth jazz because really, that's the only avenue that's open for an artist like me right now to market smooth jazz. Now, I'm more of a funk jazz artist, but for marketing's sake, that's the only available. Because radio has so become so compartmentalized. It's hard to do anything. It's really hard to do it.
Right, I will agree, and it appears to me too, Tom, that I know videos, they have a place, but it seems that with videos, they've put more emphasis on the visual aspect of music and artistry as opposed to just, the music in itself, maybe what the artist does live, what kind of feeling and effect you get from the song. They've placed the emphasis on the visual aspect. Well, what kind of video are you going to put together with it?
Exactly.
Is that what you've noticed too?
Yeah. Matter of fact, I got a good friend that told me these days, if you got a song out that's getting airplay, if you don't have all these elements hooked up, because someone's going to listen to that song and they're going to go right to YouTube and see, do you have a video?
Right.
And they're going to go right from YouTube right to CD Baby and see if they or iTunes and see if they can download it. And if all those chains, all those links aren't hooked up, you lost them.
Right.
They're gone. They're buying your product next.
Right.
It's just that kind of day. It's not as much about the content of the musical side of the art. My wife said it best. My wife told me this is the era of entertainment, which is cool because that's what it's always been about, entertainment. But the whole thing is, entertainment meaning what? Entertainment meaning, okay, it's not necessarily about your playing. It's not about can you play or can you sing. Or it's more about can you thrill me?
Right.
Can you shock me?
Right.
And the thing about that is the shock factor. Something shocks you today, tomorrow you're used to it. So the shock factor's got to increase,
Exactly.
and it keeps going down the cycle like that. Yeah. It's a hard road to walk.
Right. I totally agree with you, Tom. So let's speak about your current project. First of all, how long has your current project been in the making?
It's been in the making for about a year, maybe a little over a year. And the new CD is called Legacy. And what it's about is trying to restate where a lot of this music comes from, which in the process of what's happening jazz-wise is getting lost. If you check it out, you used to hear Grover Washington, George Benson, Najee a whole lot more than you do now. Now you're hearing Boney James and Dave Koz and great artists. Okay, but somewhere in the process, the heritage of this music is getting lost.
Right.
Roy Ayers is recording and touring just as much as he ever did, but you don't hear him on the radio as much. So we as jazz artists need to speak out. We need to carry the torch, carry the heritage. Say what this music is about. I remember you could look up 15 years ago in the encyclopedia, what is jazz? And it would say, jazz is a musical tradition that has its roots steeped in African music, and from this African music came both the blues and this form called jazz. And it would talk about that. Now you look at what is jazz, and it's talking about, jazz is a multicultural art form that has, some roots in Africa, some roots in Europe, and, it's changed. It's a whole different ballgame.
Right. So with your current project, you're trying to basically, I don't want to say reestablish, but just, kind of move those thoughts forward that you just mentioned.
Exactly. It's a real simple phrase that says, you can't know where you're going if you don't know where you've been. You got to know what street you're on to know what street to turn on next.
Right.
And if our young musicians don't know where this music comes from, then what are we gonna grab onto?
Right. Okay. So who are some of the guest musicians and so forth that you have on your current project?
Man, I found this female singer when I did a gig over in the Netherlands a couple of years back. She's Filipino, and but she's living in a Dutch country now, and she was guest appearing on a gig that I had. I flew over there to do the gig, and they put the band together for me over there in the Netherlands. And so my attitude was like, okay, well, I'm just going to go do this gig, and I ain't necessarily expecting a whole bunch. And this lady opened her mouth, and all I could do was just sit there and go, because man, she could sing, she could sing, and so we ended up doing a couple of interviews and some talking, and come to find out that she explained it pretty much. Singing is like a national pastime in the Philippines. I mean, more so than just an art. It's like what she explained, like even the garbage men sing as they're doing their work. It's just a thing that everybody does. So, man, I just vowed that I got to use this girl on my next record. I just vowed it, and then her name is Joyce San Mateo, and she's pretty tough. She's pretty tough.
Okay, how many tracks is she on the current release?
Well, we're still working on some of the projects. She's on right now. She's on 3, and some of the project is strictly instrumental. Okay. But she's on 3 so far. She'll probably end up being on about 4 or 5.
Okay. So how many total tracks do you anticipate being on it?
10.
10? Okay. So there's going to be a mixture of vocals and instrumentals as well.
Right. Yeah. And where it's coming from is it's the vocals are kind of like neo soul jazz. That's kind of the way it's leaning. But the instrumentals are straight up funk. I mean, we got one that's a tribute to Nelson Mandela, and the song is actually called Mandela. And I put the song together, and it's very reminiscent of early Najee. It's just that kind of groove. It's real strong. I hope folks enjoy it.
Okay. Now, Tom, you just mentioned, about there's going to be some straight up funk, on this release. When you set out, did you, decide to end up here in the funk jazz aspect of things, or was it something just happened by chance?
It happened by chance. When I started recording, to be honest with you, I was really directionless, and I ended up with a good producer. Dave Grusin is one of those producers like Quincy Jones or like Bob James, where they take whatever your forte is and find a way to. They don't change you. They just find a way to mold the circumstances around you to make it work in different genres. So that's why I ended up going that kind of pop jazz. But with that one hit, Jamaica Funk, and then Thighs High, and from that point on, it was jazz funk. I mean, that's what the audience knew me for, and so that's kind of the direction which I'm cool with, because to me, I mean, there's such a connection between funk and jazz. Most of the early funk players were jazz musicians anyway.
Right.
So there's such a connection between those art forms that I'm fine with it. I'm cool with it.
Okay. So now, Tom, that there's this project, this mission is underway to, build a Funk Music Hall of Fame and Exhibition Center right here in Dayton, Ohio. And, what are your thoughts about that? I mean, the whole funk element, its influence on the musical landscape as a whole, and now to try to establish something to memorialize and keep that history alive. What's your thoughts on that?
Certainly no better place than Dayton. I mean, Zap, and how many funk groups come out of Ohio? So I mean that's like perfect. Yeah, I mean I think just like the other elements of our music, jazz, blues, and so on. Yeah, there needs to be something that is in concrete, etched in stone, that says this is us, this is where we come from, this is what we do, and this is a memorial to what we do. So yeah, I'm all for it. I hear what you're saying 100%.
Okay, well, thank you. So you mentioned about the two passions you have, both as a musician and then also aviation and so forth. So
yeah.
Are you saying that, are you a pilot, or what's the extent that you have in that field?
I was an airline captain for probably a decade and a half. I've been involved in aviation going back a couple of decades. That actually was my I won't say my first love, but it was a co-love, and it just seemed to be my career path. Even when Jamaica Funk and all those songs came out, we'd be flying to gigs, and there'd be part of me saying, "Man, I wish I was flying this plane instead of flying on this plane." And I just finally had to get to the point where I went back into it. I took like a 9-year break from music, from like mid '80s through pretty much the mid '90s or late '90s, and I really went back into the aviation side of things. And I've always had my license, but got my higher credentials. Ended up flying charter. Ended up being a chief pilot for several charter services, and finally ended up as an airline captain for quite a few years. I was with FedEx Feeder until early '09, I believe it was. At which point I just decided, going back full time into music and make the rest of my career in music.
Right. Well, I guess you're one of the fortunate ones that you've been able to, have a career in both of these fields, so to speak, because sometimes when the music industry goes through its ups and downs. Yep. In your case, it's good that you had something else that you're just as passionate about that you could fall back on.
Well, yeah, but there's that expression that people say "jack of all trades." And the rest of that expression is "master of none." It just gets to a point, where you have to say, "Okay, look, I may love to do multiple things, but for the rest of my life, the rest of my career, now I'll always be involved in aviation." Matter of fact, we got a program going on right now that's training high school age young people for the up-and-coming airline pilot shortage. So we're actually working with a guy named Warren Wheeler, who was the first black captain on Piedmont and US Air. He and I are working together, training young folks to fly. So if you get a chance, go online and look up a program called Aerolina, AIROLINA. It's a 501c3. So that's what we're doing now in that aspect. But it just got to the point where I had to say, look, music's going to be the rest of my career. I'm going to do this until I die. Every great musician I know, Ella Fitzgerald, Dizzy, they all had their instrument in their hand till they couldn't do it anymore. Right. And so that's just what I want to do.
Okay. All righty. So evidently your current CD project, it's not finished completely, but you do have a lead-off single that's out right now, right?
Right. We have a single out called Daydreamin', that's featuring Joyce San Mateo. We have another single coming out here in about 3 weeks or so called Mandela. That'll be more of an instrumental, so that should be pretty good. And then the album is actually coming out in March.
Okay. Hey Tom, I see that you're holding your horn there. Why don't you blow us a couple of notes here? Jamaica Funk, or maybe something that's going to be on your new project.
Oh, we'll see. Yeah, this is my alter ego. I can't go anywhere without this thing. I mean, in my bedroom is my wife, my trumpet, and me.
I understand.
Oh, let's see. What could I blow? Let me see here. The new record. Well, I'll just blow some licks and see how that works.
Well, you say this. You got this track Mandela coming. Can you give us a taste of that, or is it too soon?
Yeah, I give you. So that's kind of like. There's that kind of thing. It's like a funky smooth jazz groove. So
right. So who does the majority of the writing on the current project?
I did some of it. Joyce San Mateo did some of it, and then a lot of the original tracks we got from a very, very fine singer who's a friend of mine named Dee Alexander down in New Orleans. So she did some of it as well.
Okay. So when you got a hold of Joyce and invited her to be a part of the project, how did she respond? Was she excited?
Disbelief, because she always. I mean, she's excited, don't get me wrong. She always wanted to sing, and she always wanted to do it professionally, and she always wanted to be a recording artist. But I don't think she was emotionally ready for the fact that the single's doing well, let's take it off, and people are saying, Joyce San Mateo, eh? Mm-hmm. So she's just kind of catching up to that. She can't believe it, but she'll do fine. She'll do fine.
Okay. We have a request here from some studio staff for you to do a couple of Funkin' for Jamaica notes. So can you give us a couple of them?
Oh man, I got to sit upright for that because the phone's got to be with me when I play them notes, man. Let me see.
Yeah, this is from David Webb, the CEO and producer of the show.
Okay, let me see that.
We like that, Tom. So Tom, I mean, that song came out, in the early 80s and so forth. I know that it's been recorded and sampled by a lot of other artists, but do you still enjoy playing it?
Oh, heck yeah. Yeah, I have a ball with that song. When I first started, and my wife put it best, I hid behind the trumpet. The trumpet is what I knew. So as long as I had the trumpet to my lips, I was cool. The second I took the trumpet off my lips and I looked out there, those 5,000 people, I was like, Lord, let me get off this thing. But now, I think what's happened is I've toured so long with Roy Ayers and Roy, we call Roy Papa. Mm-hmm. And Papa has shown me how to relax, how to have fun with the audience, how to just say, hey, yo, what's up? And I've just learned to have fun. I've learned to go on stage and have fun.
Okay. So evidently, you're still touring and still performing live, right?
Oh yeah, very much so. Very much so.
Okay. All right, Tom. Why don't you tell everybody, where they can go so they can stay in touch with you? Websites, social media, whatever contact information you want to put out there. Why don't you share with our audience where they can stay in contact with you?
Well, my website is tombrowne.org. Tom BROWNE. I got an E on the name. .org. Or you can go to my Facebook site, which is facebook.com/Tom Browne Jamaica Funk. So either one of those ways, or you can email me at tom@tombrowne.org, either one.
Okay, all righty. So once again, as this Funk Music Hall of Fame and Exhibition Center project gets on the move, we definitely want you to keep that in mind when you're out there touring and promoting what you're doing and just help bring awareness to this mission.
Absolutely. My pleasure. My pleasure to do so.
All right. Well, Tom, thank you for joining us this morning, and we wish you nothing but success with your future career, and have a great rest of the day.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, and thanks to the listening audience for supporting this music. We appreciate it.
All right. This is Skip the Funktologist, host of the Funk Music Hall of Fame and Exhibition Center's award-winning show, Funk Chronicles. Until next time, keep it funky.